Close your eyes and just stay tight. We have to go. Stay with me while we leave. Don't worry, just believe me. This journey will relieve us. Stay with me while we leave. Stay with me.
Chicos, buenas noches. A ver un ratito. Me olvidé abrir esto. ¿Cómo está? El día de hoy vamos a tener un stream súper largo que ya va a quedar para que ustedes lo puedan ver nuevamente. Un segundo, voy a bajarle ya la musiquita. Ahí nada más. Denme un segundo que se me fue el link. AMD Meet the Experts. Es algo rápido nada más, perdón. No tuve tiempo de hacer en la tarde porque se me cargó de chamba, pero vamos a revisarlo. Justo estaban viendo mi
Hello everybody.
Hello everybody. Yeah. Yo creo que a 5 suficientes. 5 suficientes. Y acá sí le metemos por todo. Un segundo. Vamos esperando que la gente se sume un poquito. Si no, igual podemos ir arrancando porque es algo rápido eso. ¿Dónde está el volumen? Acá está el volumen. Bien, acá en el mezclador. ¿No le he bajado? No, ya estamos aquí. Voy a poner acá hi-fi y arrancamos ya. En un segundo que quiero monitorear. Opa. A ver, prueba de audio y arrancamos. Hoy debí haber venido con la casaca normal porque he sido algo rápido, ya que en un ratito empezamos Fortnite. Ya, perfecto, se escucha bien. Ya. Rapidito, como les decía, vamos a reaccionar a este de acá. Quiero que vean. Hoy es un stream de tecnología, es muy bueno. Les va a ayudar a conocer un poquito más de la serie AMD Ryzen Mobile. ¿Qué está pasando en otros países, ¿no? Es muy bueno, les recomiendo que súmanse. De cierta forma lo único que necesitan es registrarse, no nada más, no es nada de otro mundo, así que vamos a empezar.
Welcome to AMD. Hello, everybody. Welcome to AMD Meet the Experts, AMD's partner webinar series discussing everything from consumer laptops to gaming desktops to professional products such as graphics and data center. Today, we are talking about creating using AMD Ryzen mobile processors. Create anywhere with AMD Ryzen mobile processors. You'll see our agenda on screen. We are going to be talking about the AMD Ryzen 5000U series and H series and how that relates to deliver fantastic performance for creators. I myself am a creator, so I'm extremely excited about this today. We're going to meet our speaker now, and you'll see the agenda up on your screen. Our speaker is on vacation, so you won't get his video, but we're joined today by Donnie Walagrowski. He is the product marketing manager behind the Ryzen brand. Donnie, maybe you could tell us a little bit about your role at AMD.
Thanks, Ryan, for sure. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm a technical marketing manager here at AMD for mobile processors. I used to work on the desktop side. So essentially, it's my job to figure out messaging and explain to folks, why processors are good and why they need them, and help people see the benefits of certain models over others. So before that, I was in the tech press for about 10, 15 years, where I worked for a publication called Tom's Hardware Guide, and I used to review processors and graphics cards and all the fun stuff. So that's my background.
Well, thanks for joining us today. And I know, per usual, Donnie has a ton of information, so I'm going to hand things over to him so he can get right to that. But before I do that, let's talk a little bit about your dashboard. You have multiple windows open up on your screen. You can resize those, move them around. You can make the slides bigger. You can make the media player bigger. You can make anything bigger and move them to your liking. I am going to point your direction to a few other important windows open on your screen. And I want to remind everybody that this will be live following the this will be on demand following the live version of this webinar. So first of all, we have our question and answer widget on your screen. You can ask us a question. We're going to answer a few of those at the end of the webinar. And I want to remind everybody that your questions are only seen by us in the background. So you don't worry, it's not going to pop up to everybody. So we do want to hear from you. And even if you just write a comment, we'd like to hear from you. Also, we have our resource list. We have a number of resources related to today's topic. We have a couple of arena courses, one specific to creating. We have some how-to sell guides in there. So I encourage you to check out the resource list and open up those on a separate tab. We also have our register now button for our upcoming webinars. We have a couple partners that'll be joining us for our next Meet the Experts. We have one next week with ANSYS, Faster Innovation Through HPC-Enabled Solutions. And then the following week, we have Lenovo on, and we'll be talking about laptops and AMD Pro processors with Lenovo laptops. So I encourage you to check those out. And the easiest way to do that is to click the Register Now button. And then finally, on the bottom right of your screen, you will see our survey widget. And we want to hear from you. So make sure before you go today that you tell us how we did, and also tell us what you'd like to see in future Meet the Experts webinars. I'm going to turn things over now to Donnie. Take it away, Donnie.
Thanks, Ryan. All right, let's dive right in. So I thought a good way to start this is to ask ourselves, what is a content creator? And that's a bit of a moving target. It's not the same as it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. But the definition pretty much is anyone that uses their PC or laptop to create content that's meant to be consumed. So some kind of media, generally. And even the word media can be mean a bunch of things. You know, it could be a YouTuber, it could be somebody who works on digital images, could be somebody who makes stuff for Hollywood and 3D and does special effects. It even could be somebody who's a programmer, who's programming something that's meant to be consumed, who maybe has to compile at home. And so it's really a broad, you know, definition nowadays. Whereas it used to be a very technical small group, now it's everybody from, you know, home users, YouTubers to full-time professionals. And even though it's a really diverse group, we really do, I mean, see some obvious trends in what this person needs. So a content creator, by definition, is going to be using some of the most demanding software in the world. Video, you know, 3D, all that stuff tends to be pretty bleeding edge, tends to use a lot of processing power to get done quickly, and it tends to take a long time. They're probably some of the most, you know, the most time-consuming things that you can do on a PC is render video and edit video, and so this user really does need the best speed they can get, more than anybody else. Time is money, and a lot of people are doing this professionally. And even if you're doing it casually for fun as a YouTuber, nobody wants to wait a long time. Now, if we're talking mobile, of course, you know, there's no sense in having a mobile platform unless you want to use it mobily, and that means you need that battery life. And this is kind of once again, this is kind of a new thing for content creators. They traditionally have just used desktops. They didn't have to worry about battery life, but as laptops got more powerful, which is thanks to AMD in a lot of ways, and I'll talk about that, it became viable to do this work on a laptop, on the go. And it's viable to do it on battery in a lot of cases, which is pretty amazing. So I'm going to go over really quickly some stuff, just to get everybody. So processors are sold in the 5000 series Ryzen and previous generations in two large categories. There's U series, which tends to be lowest power for thin and light form factor. So, and then there's the 8 series, which tends to be more of a desktop replacement, larger system that's, you know, that has more power. And content creators can definitely blur the lines of what they're looking for. It's viable nowadays to have a thin and light system and do content creation. And it's also, of course, always viable to have a larger desktop replacement that maybe is easier to work on, maybe is, you know, better resolution, larger screen. But it's no longer a simple one-size-fits-all deal where content creators used to have to go to high-power systems, which would correlate with the 8 series. Now that's not the case anymore. You can really get a lot of work done on a low-power system nowadays because they just have so much performance. And to highlight that, here's a quick look at our desktop, our laptop stack, U series and 8 series, and they both top out at 8 cores and 16 threads. That's something unique to AMD. Our competition in the thin and light space limits you incredibly, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's nowhere near 8 cores and 16 threads. So that's why it's really viable now on a thin and light notebook. To do serious content creation. The 5000 series is the newest Ryzen mobile you can buy right now. We have incredible performance we'll go over. We have incredible battery life we'll go over. Compared to last gen, it's higher frequencies. You can get more multitasking done, more responsiveness. And we'll talk about each of those pieces as we look at the processors. So we'll start with the battery life. We've come so far for Windows laptops compared to even 3 years ago. We have laptops in market right now that'll give you 20 hours of general usage, maybe a little more, 21 hours of movie playback. There's no that you can get on that you can't watch, for the whole time with these laptops. And of course, if you're doing content creation, that battery life is going to be significantly less because it's much more demanding on the processor and therefore uses more power. But you should get, a number of hours offline, depending on how scalable what you're doing is. And that's really important. That really makes it viable nowadays. I talked about how we have more cores and threads than the competition. If you're looking at the 15 watt space or sub 30 watt space, which is really where you're thin. This slide really says why we are the guys to go to. So on the left, the competition, Intel's 11th gen processors called Tiger Lake. The best processors they have for 35 watts and below are limited to 4 cores. We literally have twice that amount. So their Core i7 has 4 cores. And in the same category, our Ryzen 3, our bottom end Ryzen has 4 cores and 8 threads. And therefore you see that similar performance in multi-threading, which is what's shown here. And then once you get to Ryzen 5, you've got 6 cores and 12 threads, and you can see we're beating their Core i7. And once you get to Ryzen 7, we've got those 8 cores and 16 threads. So you've got this huge amount of performance difference, and that really reflects directly scalability to the amount of time it takes to complete a project. And content creators do things that take hours. So it's a big deal when you've got something that takes an hour and a half instead of taking 3 hours. That's the most important thing for that content creator, is to not wait for that workload. That means they can do more iterations of that workload. They can hone their content, or they can just get it done faster and move on to something else. So,
ojo, y estamos
like
haciendo comparaciones en creación de
most
contenido.
Demanding user, and that's why this is just so important for them to have that performance. Another way to look at this is to see how far we've come, and I wasn't kidding when I said AMD has really changed this.
Esta parte es buena, ni siquiera yo las toco en mis capacitaciones, pero a partir de ahora las voy a tocar.
2016, if you wanted to use a laptop, you could have no more than 4 cores and 8 processing threads. That's
Lo comparan con un Ryzen Threadripper de primera generación. Wow. Ustedes saben que los procesadores Threadripper fueron los más potentes. Eran como unos procesadores de servidores, pero para escritorios, ¿no? Para workshop. Entonces ya la serie 5000H, desde una Ryzen 5, te da un rendimiento superior. Ya, este es un datazo. Este es un datazo si es que estás interesado en comprarte una serie Ryzen 5000H. O sea, ya estás súper seguro que vas a tener un rendimiento superior que una Threadripper 1900H. Hasta a mí me sorprende. Acá estoy sorprendido. La verdad nunca pensé hacer este tipo de comparación. No lo hubiese podido hacer porque no tengo PC. Pero está interesante. Yo pensé que la Ryzen 9, pero la Ryzen 5 sería H le ganó.
So this is our high power processor. So I talked about the 8 series and how that's really
esta parte a mí me gusta porque está hablando de los nuevos procesadores H,
so this is kind of the most you can get in a mobile platform. You're going to have bigger displays on these systems, maybe a
realmente son los procesadores más avanzados para portátiles gamer, ¿no? O sea, ya van a ver por qué viene la serie, por qué viene el final X, ¿no? Porque está hecho preparado para Overclocked.
And just more of a higher power envelope that kind of lets you, get a lot of work done. So 45 watts for us. Now,
ya es un fierrazo.
Our competition has just introduced their their newest competitor to us. And they used to
20 megabytes de caché para una Ryzen novela.
So now they have
y 4.6 GHz boost. O sea, se dan cuenta que nosotros no necesitamos tener 5.0 o 5.2. ¿Por qué? Porque nosotros tenemos una mejor arquitectura, un mejor proceso de fabricación, ¿no? Nuestros núcleos funcionan de manera más óptima, la memoria caché también. ¿Qué están haciendo acá? A ver, comparan una i9 de 11ª generación HK, 65 watts TDP, una 65, checa, 65 watts. Por eso es que recién ellos tienen 8 núcleos que han tenido que sacrificar del TDP. Ryzen 9, la 4900H, que es de la serie 4000, y la Ryzen 9 5900HX, Ryzen 5000, que tiene el mismo TDP.
You're going to be a little limited. And as you can see, with 20 watts left, we're still competitive, if not winning, in pretty much most of these productivity benchmarks.
Ya, la serie 5000 está súper.
As 3D Mark defines it.
Sí, pero esa de 65 watts te consume harta energía y por ende también recalienta más.
We're about at the same rate with less power. And here we get into the content creator
con un
stuff.
TDP.
So, Adobe
¿Por qué
Photoshop,
pasa esto?
is probably
Es algo
more
interesante
focused
porque
on what we
nosotros
call single thread or
optimizamos la
responsiveness,
potencia
and in
por
that
watt consumido.
area, we're very close to the competition, even though we're using less power. But as you get into stuff that relies on more cores and more threads, which tends to be what the heavy content creation workloads use, you're going to see bigger and bigger advantages with our software depending on, with our Ryzen processors depending on the software you're using.
O sea, acá te das cuenta
pretty
cómo es
much
que
at a
puedes
tie in
tener
2 out of
más
3 of these, and one
rendimiento
of
con
them
un
it's
menor TDP.
43% faster. And once again, if something's taking you 2 hours on one option and
Y en este
maybe
caso
an
la
hour and a
i9
half on the
también
other
tiene
option,
8
that's a
núcleos
big
16
deal.
hilos.
That's a big difference to the creator's life. So that's definitely something to think about.
Para
And here in
renderizado
3D
y
rendering, once again, this is
codificación.
a multi-threaded option.
Blender.
You know, we have
Los
up
que
to
no
16%
conocen Blender es
faster.
como el
Generally,
AutoCAD,
it's
pero
the
más
same
optimizado.
same
Y es libre.
performance or faster on our processors, but using a lot
Sin
less
DaVinci
power, which is the
R23.
point of having a mobile platform.
Ya, o sea, y también la serie 4000 está
So that's the newest 8
por
series from
bajo.
Intel,
Y
where
eso
they
que
have
están
8
metiendo en la serie 4000
we're gonna go over some more
para
stuff
que
now,
hagan un
but I'll
comparativo,
open with
porque
our
realmente la
first
serie
poll
4000
question with
compite, ya
Ryan.
saben
Ryan, go
ustedes,
ahead,
con
please.
décima, ¿no? Pero lo están haciendo comparar
Yeah,
ahorita
let's
con
take a look at the
onceava.
poll question, get some
Muy buena.
feedback from all of you. A lot of great information there. This is our first poll question. AMD Ryzen mobile processors feature up to 8 cores and 16 processing threads at 35 watts TDP and below for powerful performance with long battery life. How many cores do Intel 11th Gen mobile processors offer in that efficient 35 watt power envelope? Let's see how you do on this. You have 4 options. 10 cores and 20 processing threads, 8 cores and 16 processing threads, 6 cores and 12 processing threads, 4 cores and 8 processing threads.
Ya, pues compite lo mismo, con 8 y 16.
We're going to see the results on the next slide, so we will get those right away. In just a moment, I'll give you a few more minutes to answer that question. And remind everybody, we've already got a number of great questions in there, so I just want to remind people to go to that question and answer window and ask your question if you have one. Let's take a look at the results now. 4 cores and 8 processing threads. Donnie, did they get it right?
Yes, that is the correct answer. So we're about to talk about, you know, the graphs I showed you were the high end, the 45 watts and above, where Intel's using 65 watts. Next, we're going to talk about 35 watts and below. So the thin and light systems, and it's true, Intel is limited to 4 cores and 8 processing threads. So in the stuff we're about to talk about, they have half of our processing resources. Very difficult for their platforms to be competitive in that arena. And our 35 watt processors we called HS. Intel's are called the
y ahora están tocando la 5980 HS, pero ya saben que la HS es para portátiles gamer ultra delgaditas.
But here's where you really start to see the big,
con 35 watts en TDPA.
In the high end, in the stuff that's 45 watts
y tienes razón, la pregunta lo respondí mal. Pensé
Pensé
que era la pregunta de la serie HX. Estaban haciendo una pregunta de la HS que va a competir con onceava generación en 35 watts. Sí, pues en 35 watts ellos llegan a 4 núcleos 8 hilos, mientras que nosotros tenemos 8 núcleos 16 hilos, ¿no?
More lighter, longer battery life, easier to carry around. You're going to see, you know, convertible systems, stuff that's more fun to play with.
Nuevamente, 4.8 GHz.
So here we see on the left, you know, there's the Intel Core i7-11378. So that's one of their best, you know, 35 watt. On the orange on the right,
Carla Jorge llegó por quien lloraba. ¿Qué tal, Carla Jorge? ¿Cómo estás? Acá es buena info. Estoy pasando buena info.
We're beating them up by a bit. It's a pretty tight race.
Más ratito ya nos metemos la partida de Fortnite ahorita y contesto los WhatsApp. Contesto los WhatsApp.
Doubling their performance because we just have so many more cores and threads. We've got 8 cores, they've got 4 cores. So inevitably, the Intel systems are going to have a big struggle here if the program is at all optimized for the kind of stuff creators will need.
Ya, comparación multinúcleos super y
gaming performance,
single.
Even as well, it's not really a creator workload, but you're looking at 66% faster. Media encoding, you're looking at about 40 to 50% faster. 3D rendering, you're looking 60 to 80% faster in these benchmarks. So it is a big deal. I mean, it is not a joke. And if you're selling a system to a consumer who considers themselves a content creator, and they also want a thin and light system, I mean, there's really not much.
Supuestamente la 1137H tiene 35 watts en TDP. Ah, lo están comparando con la i7 de 11ª generación de 35 watts en TDP porque no tienen una i9 de 35 watts y no lo van a poder tener porque consume energía. Si no avanzan la arquitectura y la fabricación no van a poder hacer mucho.
Core i7 1165 G7s, pardon me, 1185
Comparativo de la
G7s
Ryzen
here
7 58001.
that are using up to 28 watts. And you're seeing that similar story when it's a single-threaded thing. It's going to be a close tie, even though we're using less power. But as we get more creator workloads, more heavier workloads that use more multi-threading, you're seeing 50% to 100% more performance with the AMD solution.
Eres una persona que quiere utilizar el Adobe Premiere. La Ryzen 5000 es el doble de renderiza el doble con el doble de potencia que una de 11ª generación.
So once again, it's just so important to remember the audience. If it's a creator that wants something, if they want something thin and light, if they need something that actually gets the job done and has actual battery life at the end of the day, I mean, there's a reason why AMD is so popular and why we are taking so much market share, especially for creators who know what they need. It's just an excellent place, an excellent time to look at AMD
todo esto hace que nuestro market share sube.
And before we close, we've only got a few minutes left. I just want to show you a couple of the systems that are really exciting out there for creators. These systems tend to be more creator-centric. So this is,
a ver, acá está la poderosa ASUS Flow, yo la tuve.
It's a really strange little system in that it
Fue algo raro trabajar con esta laptop porque tú estás acostumbrado a que un equipo gamer sea grueso y tosco y tenga potencia. Me la dieron y yo pensé, pucha, muy bonita todo, pero no tiene rendimiento, pero wow, ¿no? Con ese hice streaming, me fui a hacer streaming en la calle, con esta portátil, fui a Iraoka, la tienda de Iraoka acá en Perú, y hice streaming, entonces pude comprobar que estos portátiles ya te sirven para crear contenido en cualquier lugar que estés. Y a pesar de ser una HS de 35 watts en TDP, trae 8 núcleos, 16 hilos. Claro está que yo lo hice con la 1650, ¿no? que venía. No utilicé la gráfica externa, que es la RTX 3080. Le asigné bastante tarea al procesador porque lo daba. Sí, yo también considero que es una gaming de la más elite que pueda haber. Más bien estoy esperando que me la regrese. Estoy esperando que me la regrese. Están en el área de... Están con influencers. Esa va a ser para mi uso diario. Porque sí, me encantó. Y la que tengo acá, que es una HX, la voy a utilizar para que sea estacionaria. O para de vez en cuando moverla, pero me gustó bastante la Flow. Me tomé unas fotos con ese modelo. Espérate, un par de meses.
Don't really want to give anything up. They want the lightest, thinnest thing, and at the same time, they want killer performance. Here's another take
la poderosa
on that
Flow,
kind
claro.
of laptop. So this is a Razer Blade 14.
Ay, miren. Bueno, la información es pública, es lo bueno, porque esta Razer ya hay un video en la página de AMD.
And this actually has a GeForce 3080.
Mira, este viene con 8. Su madre, el HX. O sea,
it's a little heavier than the ASUS.
Normalmente los procesadores con overclocking, sea la HX o la HK, que me imagino de Intel, vienen en equipos más gruesos, más robustos, porque necesitan una infraestructura más avanzada, pero ¿qué están haciendo las marcas? ¿O qué permite AMD con estos procesadores HX que tienen harta potencia, pero overclocking a la vez tienen un consumo óptimo en energía? Pueden estar no solamente en portátiles gamer robustos, sino también en ultra delgadas. Ese es muy bueno. Esto habla de que obviamente la gente de Razer, de ASUS y demás marcas hacen las pruebas, ¿no? Entonces, ¿qué tranquilidad te da AMD de poder tener una potencia gamer en un portátil ultra delgado? Esta es la Ryzen 5 5500. Ok, es una HP, ¿no? Es una Envy 360. Las Envy hace tiempo que no las veo. Me gustaría tener una Envy también para probar. Va a venir en 2 presentaciones, con Ryzen 5 y Ryzen 7 5000. IPS, Full HD, gráficos Radeon porque no necesita más. Buena RAM, SD y hasta 18 horas de batería. Ahí está la poderosa Omen, que acaba de entrar a Totus, a Replay Perú. Me imagino que a nivel Latinoamérica también está entrando en otros países, en otros retails o cadenas. No sé si la pueda tener, sino ahora lo que estoy haciendo es como no tengo algunos equipos en mano para probarlo, porque se compra para las demos para los influencers, me voy a ir a tienda y lo voy a probar en tienda. Hago transmisiones en vivo, transmisiones en router. Me han dicho que es buena máquina. Justamente justo tiene el mismo procesador que yo estoy utilizando ahorita. IPS, bueno, 144 Hz para arriba es buenísimo. Ah, viene con RTX. Te juro que yo pensé que venía con 1650, o sea, está bien complementado. Es la mejor combinación de refrigeración, rendimiento y precio. No sé, creo que sí vi el precio, ahorita lo vemos si quieren, estaban como 5.000, por ahí, 5.000, 4.000, 5.000, o sea, claro, no estaba. Soles, ¿no? Ya en dólar hay que hacerle la conversión. Ah, sí, Víctor, ¿se llega? Puta, bacán.
To carry laptop.
Bacán.
Crazy how much power you've got with these things. Last couple ones here, we got the Lenovo Legion.
Esa yoga estaba buena. Esta es la Slim, esta es la Legión. Ya, de este producto yo hice el String con serie 4000, me fue pero super cañón. Con serie 5000 será otra cosita. Ya viene con 165 Hz. Punto a favor. Vienen con RTX, ya no vienen con GTX. Y tienen Wi-Fi 6, pero bueno. La mayoría, lo bueno es que el procesador soporta Wi-Fi 6 desde el Ryzen 4000. Ya depende del fabricante si le quiere poner. Acer Swift. Me gustan bastante las Swift en el tema de la chasis. Yo tuve dos Swift. La Swift 3 y la 5. Muy buenos equipos.
And on that note, I'll hand it over to Ryan for the last poll question.
Yeah, let's get to another poll question. And
a ver, otra preguntita.
If you don't get this right, you definitely weren't paying attention. So why are AMD Ryzen mobile processors perfect for creators on the go?
Perfecta para creadores de contenidos.
Mobile processors offer up to 8 cores and 16
Only
processing
Ryzen
threads
Pro
for
of 2 hasta 8 núcleos, tiene hasta 8 núcleos 16.
AMD Ryzen mobile processors can deliver more
delgadas,
performance while using less power than the
más
competition. AMD Ryzen mobile
con la
processors feature a large built-in cache memory to help
memory.
speed
Ya,
up
yo le digo que es todo.
responsiveness and performance, or is
De
it
ley.
all of the above?
Todo.
Really hoping that 80% of you or more get this correct. I'll give you a few
Joaquín
seconds
Sala,
to
regálame un
answer that,
procesador.
and we're going to get to a few questions following.
No, la
this,
verdad es
so
que no
let's
podemos
see how
regalar
y'all
procesadores
did.
porque vienen dentro de las portátiles.
And 100%
Podemos regalar portátiles, pero como les
that
dije,
makes me
cuando
feel
lleguemos
good
a los
about,
100.000, a los 100.000
our audience
suscriptores.
today. We are going to get to
Ya
a few
toda la gente
questions
ganamos.
right now.
Sí, esa era la pregunta correcta.
So again, their Q&A widget's open by default. You can ask a question. We're going to get to a few of these live. If we don't get to them live, we'll make sure that we answer these offline. So our first question is related to overclocking. Donnie, can the 5000
yo no
series
tengo
mobile
preguntas.
CPU be overclocked?
Pero ya,
If so,
cuando
how?
tú lo ves en vivo, porque ya no pude verlo en
That's a
vivo,
great
acá te
question.
salen
So,
para hacer preguntas en
there's
vivo.
When I say overclocked in mobile, it's a different animal that is in desktop. So
Argentina
the
en
first thing
Q4.
I'll say is that any processor that ends in
Sí,
so the
estos
X,
equipos,
that
puta,
we use
ya
in
quiero que
desktop to show that
ingresen.
it's overclockable, we
Va a ser un
also
golazo.
use in mobile. But it's not overclockable in the same way. So essentially, when you see an HX processor for AMD, that means that the OEM, the laptop manufacturer, has
¿Qué está hablando?
given you a turbo option that might not directly allow the clocks to go higher, but what it does is it will let you open up the thermal envelope. And a lot of time, that power envelope is really what's stopping performance more than your actual clock speeds. So the clock speeds tend to track really closely to responsiveness, and they don't really change much on the fast end of it. But when you're doing multi-threaded tasks and you have more power envelope to work with, that would be a bottleneck. So if you've got, say, you know, say one of these laptops lets you use, you know, 55 watts on a 45-watt processor when you're plugged into power at the wall, that really will scale almost linearly to your multi-threaded workloads for creators.
Que
They're
lleguemos,
actually
dice
the
Carlos.
biggest
Sí,
winners
ojalá,
here. I mean,
la verdad
gaming
que ojalá
doesn't really
lleguemos.
care that much about
Ojalá,
the TDP that goes to the processor because
yo estoy
games
haciendo
aren't
bastantes
really as
cosas
multi-threaded
luchando
and designed to be
porque
as
haya
demanding on the
mejoras.
processor
No, los
side, but
sorteos ahora son
creator,
para
all creator apps pretty much
Perú,
are very
Ecuador,
taxing on
Colombia y
using as many
Chile.
threads and optimizing
Ya
that
no
as much as
solamente
they
para un
can. So
país,
you
sino
will
ya para
see
Latinoamérica.
a linear almost increase there.
Mandamos a hacer
And Ryan, I'm just going to go through the questions here quickly because we're
Golden,
almost out of
Silver y
time.
Black Box.
I had a good question here about battery life.
bueno,
What was the white paper
voy a tener un
settings?
concierto en
If
vivo.
you go to the
Alístense.
Mobile Mark
Para fines de
website and look
septiembre
at
o para el
their
siguiente trimestre.
laptops there, and this is
Pero de ley
a
llegamos a 100.000
combined
y ahí
answer
sí
for
ya
the
pídame la laptop que
HP
quieran. Puede ser
question
una
as
laptop
well if there's
al año, tal
pro
vez.
laptops.
O una laptop
You will
cada,
see some of the
una laptop
biggest,
cada medio año.
some of the laptops, modern laptops that give you the
Bueno, chicos,
most
vayan
battery life
preparando
that you
ya,
can
poco a
get.
poco.
You'll find them there. So it's not really a white paper we use. We just use Mobile Mark. We run the test. Generally, most of these tests we run at the balance profile, either the balanced or battery saver setting, to make those kind of, to make those claims on battery life. But you can see the settings and the systems that were used on the Mobile Mark site, the ones that were getting 20 some out. Specific HP systems, I'm so sorry, Ken. I'm just having a complete brain lockdown for the name of the HP Pro systems, but we tend to market them under the Pro moniker, so it'll be a Ryzen Pro system. I'll try to get to you offline and remember the Pro systems. I'm a consumer guy, so or whatever, and I know the name of it, but it is on the tip of my tongue. I cannot get it, but we'll get you that by email. I'll let you know what business class laptops we have.
Yeah, and we will get to a number of these questions that we still got a number of questions in there. We're going to make sure that just out of respect of time that we are going to answer those offline because we are hitting that 30-minute mark. And what we do really appreciate y'all coming and joining us. I just want to kind of close things out and just remind all of you before you do leave to make sure that you go to the bottom right of your screen. It'll also pop up at the end of this webinar, the survey widget. And as a reminder, these questions that we didn't get to, and there's even more coming in.
Yeah.
I've even seen a thank you from Ken.
Bueno, muchachos, eso era todo, amigos, seguidores. Ahora vamos a pasar a Twitch. Vamos a hacer unas partiditas de Fortnite. Así que nada, espero que estos son unos nuevos live. Vamos a reaccionar a todos los AMD Meet the Experts y otras cositas anuncios que haga AMD, ¿no? Como el lanzamiento del CES, el Computex, no sé, pues otras cosas más. Esto ha sido algo improvisado, pero bueno, ha salido, me parece bien. Y ya queda para reforzar en caso más adelante quieran esa info, ¿no? ¿Cómo hacer? Fácil, se van a AMD Arena. Ya, AMD Arena, les dejo acá. Acá se pueden ustedes se pueden suscribir a lo que son cursos o también para lo que son Meet the Experts, ¿no? Webinars. Bueno, eso es todo. Espero que les haya gustado. Y si tienen dudas, dejen sus preguntas en los comentarios. No, en el chat ya se va a cancelar. En los comentarios de video. Encantado de poder ayudarlos. Nos vemos en Twitch. Chaito.